let your feelings show. You believe in love, and you're prepared to grow together.
Good evening and welcome to The Art of Healing. I'm Alexa Major, and tonight I'm joined by the creator of this series, Jonathan Lowe, and the program's most long-standing host, Bill O'Donnell, in the beginning of a retrospective of the past 10 years of this series. Hi, gentlemen.
Hello.
Hi, Alex. If there's nothing prepared, and you watch these shows and how these things come out, you realize there's something more going on here than what there was no script. We were just going for it, and the things that we got, when you think back about it, you know what I mean? Some of these shows, you look at them, you realize they didn't prepare a minute for some of these things that came out, and it's just remarkable what really did happen. And I'd say we also learned a lot on the job. I mean, that was John's idea. We get in there and put these people on camera and start talking, and I think over the years we probably learned more than anybody, because we had that chance to interview them, ask them questions, and sometimes come back if necessary. So yeah, I think about it was a real great learning device too for us to grow personally.
Can you give an example of either one of these, something remarkable that you recall, if anything stands out, while you were allowing this process to happen? Is there a moment of something
There's
that...
one for me that involved Bill. It was at the Spirit Flight bookstore with Tim Zimmerman, and we were doing a hypnotherapy show, and Bill said, okay, why don't you hypnotize me right here in front of the camera and we'll see what we go. And Tim said, well, what do you want? We need a pathway, we need an objective in the session. What do you want to go towards? Where do you want to go? And Bill said, well, I'd like to meet Jesus Christ. And so Tim said, okay, that's what you're going to do then. So you take over, Bill. What happened?
Well, I mean, it's a good thing Jonathan didn't tell me what we were going to do that day, because we got there, and basically Tim is a hypnotherapist and teaches this. So I'd had past life regression therapy years before in Berkeley with, can't think of the psychologist's name, so I'd had some experience in going in and recovering images or thoughts about past lives, whatever you believe about them. And so that was one of my first interests and passion years before. So it really wasn't about hypnotism, but he was just going to guide me going in. And Tim thought I was wondering, well, did I have a past life with Jesus? But no, what I wanted to know was what was my connection to Jesus. And so here I am, Jonathan's on camera capturing all this, and then I'm having the experience of what I believe to be what I think in the Christian creed is like God as light from light. I came in touch with these light beings right there in the show, in the moment, sort of thing, and it was analogous to the movie Cocoon, where they took off their deals. Wasn't as bright, but I got this real sense of all these light beings. And
I'd like for you to take a deep breath, a deep, deep breath, and travel with that light so that it takes you to that event that has caused you to feel a connection to Jesus Christ. Follow one of the lights. They will show you and lead you into that time, that connection, that experience, whatever it might be. Remember, now is a time to trust. Now is a time to trust. There's a reason why you asked to go back and find out about Christ. There is an inkling inside of you. You would never ask that question. Be honest with yourself and move with that light. So, while a past life, it may not be so important that it actually happened, but metaphorically, how it applies to your present-day life is essential. It's really a fantastic way of looking at mirrors or holographic impressions of who you are without having to move into that. You can physically stay where you are, but yet your mind can travel and show you. Your inner voice is so powerful. Your inner knowing, your inner wisdom is unlimited. It's associated to that prana, to that flow of what some people may call God. Are you inside or outside, one or the other? Trust yourself.
I have a slight pain on the top of my head.
I perceive you and I as both being fragments of God. There is an intrinsic true self to us. That is a fragment of God. So to say that there is a separate, isolated being that we call God the Father is not appropriate for me. I don't see that. I don't feel that. While it may be very easy to visualize or to conceptualize, very easy to communicate that idea, it's limited in its expression. God is 1 billion times more than an isolated being. 1 billion times more.
I can't tell. It seems to be all pervasive.
It comes from everywhere. Tell me more about your connection to Christ.
I'm experiencing just indistinct light colors with no perceptible shape or form.
I see.
And if you think about, imagine, what are we going to be like when we're no longer in body? Now, we know from dead bodies, as opposed to what we have in live bodies, how much we enliven these bodies compared to a dead body. So just imagine when there's no body to enliven, what are we going to be like? And this is the image that I actually got in touch with. And I just, it was more, not so much clairvoyant or clairaudient, it was more clairsentience, where I was sensing and hearing, and I think I heard some things too. I have to look at the tape. But it was an incredible experience. I mean, just all in the day's work of the art of healing or something, you know, and it wasn't planned and it wasn't scripted, and none of us knew what we were going for, and then what we got. When you think about it, that was an extraordinary piece.
Wow.
And it helped you understand what Christ consciousness was. You felt it, and you saw the light. And I think you half expected to meet a person, but to see the light was...
I don't even know where the impulse to ask the question came from. Do you know what I mean? So we're talking, that's what I mean when I say a lot of this was just, I'm sure there's some divine guidance here. You know, and I mean, the church has always talked about angels as a reality, that they are there, and that the communion of saints are where all these people go when they've no longer in body, no longer alive in the world. And here they were, it's like a crowd around them. And then if you think back to cross-reference that with people like Kubler-Ross's work, Raymond Moody's about, you know, life after life and the experience of the tunnel and being meted by all these, you know, relatives and friends who'd gone on before you. I mean, it was like that. Although there was no image, like I didn't see people while I wasn't dying. I was just kind of taking a glimpse over, and it's all inside of us. So that was just, you know, one of Jonathan's shows and his idea. So I give him credit for it. I just sort of had to swallow my fear and go with it and just be present. So that's what happened. That was amazing, really.
Right.
And one of the other ones concerned a woman called Maris Foreman, who came to that original relationship, sharing the healing program, and she came to share what she thought was going to be her healing from breast cancer, and ended up over the following year sharing her dying from breast cancer. And as she went through the process of dying, she kept calling me up and saying, "I've got more to talk about. I want you to come and videotape me now." And she even thought that she wanted her death videotaped, because she kept feeling like what she had gone through, other people should see it and hear it and learn from it. I mean, for example, some of the healers that she went to see actually harmed her, and she knew they did, and yet in her innocence going to them, she thought it was going to help, and maybe they were a little bit too strong in some of the adjustments they made or whatever, but she felt like they did the opposite of healing.
Well, much to say. I am healing from breast cancer, which has developed over I don't know how many years. It does not show up for a while often. And I began treatment this last summer after being diagnosed by an MD. But I chose another route than surgery and chemotherapy and radiation, which were recommended. I think I still have those old messages from childhood, including that cancer is like a monster and it comes in the door and it's enormous and it eats people up and they die, and they always die. And I think that's what I had understood as a child. I'd like to simply say I think it is far better to do what Spirit prompts us to do. What the heart calls for would be the thing to go for. I have wished to do a lot of artwork in my life, for example, that I did not do, and I didn't know that it might hurt me. I don't think I knew anybody that I wanted to be like. And I guess it was okay for me to develop my reproductive organs, but if I didn't develop breasts, I wouldn't look like a woman. And to this day, I look young. I'm 47, and people tell me that I look somewhat younger. I think I just didn't want to go on. And again, I don't know why the cancer didn't show up earlier, but I think it has something to do with feeling like, don't make me do that. And, I wanted to have breasts to be attractive, but
Don't make me do what?
don't make me become a woman like
Because?
these women, because I'll find myself having to cross myself. So it was during this time that the oncologist told me that that's the data, and I drew my own conclusions and checked it out in so many words that mine is now a terminal case. I want to contact certain people, probably by letter, but maybe by phone, because I'd like their encouragement, I guess, to go out of this life. I want their blessing.
And that was a lesson for a lot of people, to be very discerning about the healers that you choose, and be very, very careful. So that was another remarkable story, show, even though it wasn't, I mean, you wonder whether death is really healing, but in her case, for her, she was ready to go by the end of it, and she said, you know, this is going to be very healing for me to die, which is not what you expect to hear.
Right. Yeah, it makes one wonder too, do you believe that death is a choice? And as you're saying, is that a part of a soul's healing process? Why do some people go on a healing path and heal, and others go on a healing path and don't heal, at least to the physical eye, you know, the physical reality? Do you have impressions based on the guests and people that you've met on death?
And maybe as much as reading the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, which is a recent update of the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and you know, where death is part of life, which obviously it's inevitable. We're all going to die, and I think what is really important in our life is to reach that place where we've accomplished our soul's mission, if we have a mission, or destiny, if there is such a thing, or we do all that we can and bring through what we have to bring through before we die, and then the death is actually a very easy process, and we're really ready for it. And then I think it really is a healing for both us and our family if it's the right time. What do you think about death, Bill?
Well, there's no time like your time, whenever that time is, you know, because as you're talking about death and rest, I've spent a lot of time in rest homes with aging relatives, and I just got back from Sacramento where I visited a woman who'll be 100 this year, and her best friend was my great aunt, and I met her through there, and she was an inspiration to me, and my great aunt couldn't figure out why she got to live to 100, you know. I mean, sure, she would have probably been happy to go like 10 years before. My own grandmother lived to be 100. And so you hear it from their side too, and then, you know, then you go to funerals of little kids and stuff. So it's a real mystery, and it's part of the, hopefully the excitement of life, that, you know, wow, you know, this is, you know, there's no guarantees, you know, how long you're going to be here. And so you want to make the most of it, you know, while you're here. And that starts with you. You know, always, you know, not in the selfish way, but in the real conscious, positive way of owning yourself and not feeling powerless. I mean, to do stuff that you need to do for yourself, whatever that might be. And you're going to make mistakes. And even meeting the wrong person, as he's mentioning there, may be a step in the right direction by, okay, not this, and then on to the next one. So, yeah, it's life is a mystery, no question about it.
Well, it's interesting you brought up the word empowerment. And we were talking earlier about the definition of healing and what that is, and about owning your experience. How do you think empowerment relates, or does it, to healing, or does that bring up any direct correlation with you with that word, self-empowerment?
It does a lot. I mean, I think of self-esteem and feeling good about ourselves on one level, but also on the highest possible level, when we're truly connected at all levels, and we know God, and we know our own soul, and we know the way the energy flows between us and God and what we bring through to the rest of humanity. We're very empowered, and I feel like that's what our mission is on the planet, is to become empowered, and then from that place bring through, whether it's creative output, or whether it's music, or whether it's being a host, interviewing people and being able to bring people out, or whether it's teaching, or whatever it is. Everyone has often more than one major skill, gift. I like the word gift, and I think that's what for me relates to empowerment. And I feel like I'm definitely a lot more empowered than I was 10 years ago. And I feel like a big part of my empowerment is to empower others too, through healing and teaching and so on. So that's what I try and do with my life.
Have you ever consciously thought about what your gift is? Not only the gift of being a talented videographer and editor and teacher, actually, here at the college you teach editing, but from an inner level, what your inner gift is that you bring to others. Have you thought about that?
It's a hard one. I think
Yeah.
it's almost like, when you're asked if you think you're an artist, you say, well, it's not really for me to judge, because, you're only an artist to those that see you as an artist, and you never know how good of a teacher you are, because it's up to the people you teach to really judge or know. It's really hard to analyze oneself, I think.
Right. I'm just wondering if you get a conscious feeling about what your gift is, if that makes it more accessible to you, or if it can give you more focus. Bill, do you have any thoughts about your personal, what you bring to the table? Something that you enjoy giving, something that you find yourself a feeling of service, perhaps, in the work that you do?
Well, the difference being here, all of a sudden now I get to be the guest, whereas I'm doing what you were doing most of the time, and so I'm there. I got to be there for them. And I remember I used to like to watch, people like Ed McMahon or others who supported the real star of the show. And your job as a host or an interviewer is to bring out their light, in a sense. I mean, otherwise you'll get in the way. And so, because that way you're always present. At the same time, you're monitoring what they're saying. You're with them. You're trying to help them get it out. At the same time, you've got one ear listening to what you think that the audience would like to hear at home, or what we need to ask of the next thing. So you're in the moment fully, both present and past and future in some sense, all at one time. So it's hard to be, otherwise I'd love to get into a levity and that kind of thing and have some fun with it, so it doesn't get too serious. But there are times when you're really into something serious and you need to be there as well. And so it really just depends on the moment. It's more just being present and being supportive of them, giving them energy if they need it. A lot of your work you're doing right before the show, making them feel at ease. I mean, I often act like a fool beforehand, taking the image off. So I'll take the pressure off of them and make a spectacle of myself or something, just to relieve them their anxiety. And none of it's conscious. I'm not doing it intentionally. So there's a lot goes on, as you know, before we ever get to this point, for what people see. And then there's the kind of the letdown afterwards, of being present because you're asked to do so much in that moment. You know what I mean? And some people are afraid of a microphone and a camera, and if we had better sense, we would be too. Oh, sorry. We gotta laugh though.
Okay, I'm going to throw out a name to you guys. I'm just going to pick from, I have a list of some of the programs, and just the first thing about that program or person that comes to your mind, maybe you can share with us. Spirit Flight.
Spirit Flight was the one we talked about, where Bill met the Christ consciousness, actually.
Oh,
And
okay.
Tim Zimmerman, who was the person on that show, we've met at Whole Life Expos. He came here for the anniversary of 10 years of healing in Santa Fe, the Art of Healing. And that was a good experience for both of us, I think. It was a pivotal moment, because I think Bill really went through from being the host to actually subjecting himself to the healing practice, and
That's a gift.
it was a great benefit, wasn't it?
That's true. We did a few of those kind of things where part of it, you're the subject, then become the subject of the guest's expertise and the rest of it, and then it's a real challenge to be present. I think there was a show or two where I probably did go unconscious on the table somewhere, or at some of that point I was not conscious of that role, and it was just going on. So I just left it to Jonathan to take care of anything that needed to be done, while I wasn't there, even though the camera was running all the
I
time.
think Jean's place, you had a crystal healing, and you
Yeah.
went out during that moment too.
Yeah, where you're laying on the table disrobed, and she had all these different gems and crystals throughout my body and this kind of thing. And I believe there was a moment or two where I wasn't there, and then to come into consciousness on the air.
Well, what does one say after one has been crystallized? Don't know. I'll have to report back later. God willing.
You know, you have to kind of pull it together in a hurry.
That's
Well, then part of what I'm trying to show is what can happen to you. So I wanted him to both be the subject and experience that losing of consciousness coming back in, but then also he was feeling, oh, I'm supposed to be at the house, so I better get back quick, you know.
And another one in her ascension chamber, and you'll see that where I'm wearing these goggles and they're going like this, and I'm, you know, we're speculating as to what's going on, and you're literally having perhaps an out-of-body experience, but it's all part of the fun of Art of Healing. you know?
right.
I don't think we'll hear children at home say, Mom, I have nothing to do here in the Ascension Chamber. And back we go. Just
That's what the show is about, trying to give some vicarious experience to people who are watching at home.
Right.
And actually that is a big part of the program, is to try and help people with the discernment. I mean, we've actually debunked a couple of so-called healers on the show over the years who we just felt were really not doing a service to mankind through what they were doing. But on the whole, I'd say 95% of the people we've covered are really helping people, and through watching the TV program, people can go, I should go and see this person. There's one particular person, Dr. Lorenzo Sandoval. Whenever his program goes on, it goes on about every 6 months, people call me up and say, how can I get hold of him? And when I see him, he says he probably gets 5 or 6 calls from every time it goes on. Just because you can feel by watching the way he works on the body that it's going to help you, and you go, I need to go to this person.
Things that have to do with the natural way of the body healing itself.
What type of, for just a manipulation, what types of manipulation do you use?
Well, I've studied, I'll manipulate the skeletal system, plus the nervous system. I'll work the nervous system to where I can relax the patient, so that when I do adjust, the adjustment will last a lot longer. It's not as harsh an adjustment as, let's say, a chiropractor would use, because a lot of chiropractors do not relax the body before they adjust the skeleton. So it's a lot harsher. They have to use more strength and more force. And I don't. I just work the muscles until I feel that they're relaxed enough to where I can move the joint or whatever that needs to be moved, and it usually stays put.
So it's kind of like that's a part of what I want to do, is to help people connect with the healer that might work for them, but also help people with the discernment. So hence when Bill's bringing out the information and what kind of people, Bill always says, what kind of people should come to you? Then that will hopefully help the audience discover healers that might really open doors for them.
When you do you come across someone who you feel is not in their integrity or doing more harm than good, do you do a program on that person, or do you let it go?
Yeah, actually, the most powerful one I can remember was about 8 years ago, and I ended up doing 3 consecutive shows on him and really allowing myself to be drawn in. I felt intuitively there was something wrong, but I felt with him he was so brilliant that the only way to really find out about him was to go right into his inner circle almost, before discovering that he really was not a good person. And then
And did that become evident on the program then?
Then the 4th show was sharing about what happened with him, and then recommending to people that it wasn't a good place to go.
What would you recommend to people who are looking for healers, somebody to help them with something that they're working with? What advice could you share with them about how to discern if they're just in a discovery process with themselves?
You start with that one.
Bill?
It's a tough one, because it brings up a lot of issues. I mean, we are not trying to do infomercials for practitioners, or we're not doing the Geraldo thing or the investigative journalism piece. Really, we're just almost covering the phenomena, and still leaving. There's still the old buyer beware business that has to be taken care of, and people have to be responsible for themselves. But how does anyone find a doctor, or which healthcare practitioner to go for? I think, if anything, and I think Jonathan would probably agree with this, we would like to see, and at least I certainly would, I mean, so that the patient or the potential client for their services is put at a disadvantage in the current healthcare system. It's kind of like independent contractors out there, and you're led to whoever you were led to. Not so long ago, the American Medical Association, the various branches throughout the state, they discriminate against a lot of people who provided this. Some of our people like Dr. Shear, I mean, they had to fight to be able to offer their services for many years, and now we're coming in this phase where it's a little more acceptable. There's no penalties for medical doctors to, say, get involved and do alternative health care as well, whereas before they were discriminated against. They could lose their hospital privileges if they didn't, do it the way they were told to do it or expected to do it. So there was a big game that we're watching and chronicling in some ways, and probably helping the movement to change and more openness. Now this provides another problem. How do you find the right person? How do you protect yourself in terms of any kind of health care malpractice? And what's your responsibility for your side of it? How is that you drew that person to you or went to it? So we're going to be growing, I hope, together in this show, and future shows will hopefully help people become more empowered, become stronger in themselves, and to take on responsibility. You can no longer just say, oh, doctor, help me. I mean, go to them and expect them to take care of you. You have to become more knowledgeable. It does more for everyone to do that and take more responsibility for your own health. And I think over the years, the people that we've chronicled, most of them have been there out of some goodness of their heart, or drawn out because they had needed to heal themselves. A lot of the great healers that we met, or healthcare practitioners, were ones who suffered from something before and drawn to it. Mm-hmm. That was a very common thread. Almost half, I'd say, or at least a third, came out of that modality.
And it's not the true meaning of the word doctor, teacher. So isn't the idea of a healer to actually teach people to heal themselves? That would be my ideal. I did have an idea once that we could have like a database of healers in Santa Fe, or even throughout the country, where all the healers did like a little 15-minute video about what they do and who they are and everything, and then you could go to a database and see all the faces on a touch-sensitive screen, and just touch one of the faces, and then you go into the 15-minute video of that person, and that would help you cross that first hurdle of like, who is this person? I mean, right now it seems to be mainly word of mouth. Like, you hear of someone who's been to a healer that has you have a similar problem to they do, and maybe it'll help you, and then you go, kind of that old word of mouth method. But using the technology of computers and video, it seems like something like that would work as a way of having that first contact with all the people that deal with that particular problem that you have, and then you can at least look at them and see the 50-minute video and get an idea of whether they might help you or not. But
yeah, that's exciting, and with the internet too, the possibilities are really exciting to keep sharing the information and giving people a chance to see what feels right to them.
And I hope if you have administrators out there for those HMOs, health maintenance organizations. I mean, that people have to remember that they, unfortunately, the current state, are there to make a profit. They are a profit organization. They're not the healthcare providers of old. But can you imagine, how it would be if you got to go to a clinic that you could then see a medical doctor, a Chinese medical doctor, a naturopath, a chiropractor, a psychological counselor, whatever you needed as part of your healthcare package.
Open up your eyes.